but different parts of New York, basically.
Yeah.
And, of course, the origins of these people are from different countries.
Yes, right, of course, right, yeah. But it's really something. This is, we got to make a point of it. We got this tape with Arafat.
Right.
It was a long time ago, but,
yeah.
You know. Welcome very much to Conversations, where it's a pleasure to welcome to the program four gentlemen that represent an organization called Natura Carta, and we're going to be talking in great length about that. It's a very interesting organization with a unique perspective on the situation as far as the Middle East and Jerusalem and some of these issues that are so much in the news now. We're doing this program on July 25th, the year 2000, and the talks at Camp David between Mr. Barak and Mr. Arafat have just been renewed with Mr. Mr. Clinton coming back from Japan from the summit meeting and so forth. So all the nation, all the world in a real sense, is focusing on the question of Israel and with the possibility of their finding peace there. And I do want to introduce the guests now, and then we're going to go briefly to a little brief interview that had been done with Mr. Arafat some time back. But if I may, on my far left is Rabbi Israel Feldman. On my far left is one of the members of the organization here, the Natura Carta, and in the middle on the left is Rabbi Hillel Deutsch, who is also, they're all members of the Natura Carta. On my immediate left is Rabbi Israel David Weiss, and on my immediate right is Rabbi William Weberman. And gentlemen, welcome very much to Conversations and to Manhattan Network, and we're going to have a great deal to talk about.
Welcome.
Now, we want to just set it off now because I had done a program, and it goes way back for those in the audience. You make note, this is a little interview we did with Yasser Arafat when he was in Tunis, in Tunisia. We did this in 1989, and in view of the fact that this is so much in the news now, we have a little piece, about 3 minutes or so, with Yasser Arafat. We're going to run that tape now and then we'll come back and we'll get into a discussion about the Natura Carta. So if they could set up that little piece, that short piece, about 3.5 minutes with Yasser Arafat, and we ask you to bear with the graininess of the picture and so forth. And also it was done in the summer of 1989, so it's 11 years old now. But if you could run that now, then please. Thank you.
Through this dialogue which we are opening with all these groups inside Israel and outside Israel, which took place in Lahore, in Paris, in Milano, in Bucharest, in Budapest, in New York, and we are continuing to do the same in the future with all these groups, so that we can coordinate and cooperate with them to achieve real peace.
Yes, right.
Real peace.
This is what is fervently desired.
And we will continue in this policy. It is a decision in our PNC. The PNC is our parliament, and we will carry on in this policy. As I told you, it is a strategic line. It is not a tactical line, because peace is not only for us. As we have mentioned, and as we have declared in the beginning, that peace for all of us, for the sake of our new generations, for the sake of our children, and for the sake of their children.
Yeah, that's right.
It's interesting. Because peace is not only for one side.
Oh, not at all. We're all interconnected.
Even peace in this area will affect directly and indirectly the international peace.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's incredibly important now as we.
This is the Middle East,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is the Middle East.
Very, very difficult.
Yes, yes. These Israeli leaders are not only against the Palestinians or the Arabs. They are against the Judaism. They are spoiling Judaism.
Judaism is right. The spiritual.
Yes. I am speaking as a
justice.
I am speaking as a real believer, as a strong. I am a believer.
Yes.
This means I am a Muslim believer. I am a Christian believer. I am a Jewish believer.
Of the book.
Yes. This is what is the meaning of to be a believer. You have to believe in all the prophets, especially we the Muslims. We believe with all the prophets, Musa and Jesus Christ and Muhammad. So they are spoiling. These Israeli leadership are spoiling Judaism. the main principles of Judaism.
Many of the people, there are some, the Torah Karta, Orthodox Jewish people.
No, the Karta is something completely different. But they are refusing these crimes.
Yes. They stand in opposition to Zionism.
I received
from based upon the Torah.
I received a letter from the Torah Karta. The last one is they are asking me to accept one of them in the provisional government.
So.
Yes. And we accepted. The moment we will declare the provisional government, I will offer to the Central Council to accept one of them in the provisional government.
Because they stand four square behind the idea of Palestine.
They are Palestinians.
Yes, right.
I consider them they are Palestinians. Like the Sumeris. The Sumeris are Palestinians also. I consider them they are Palestinians. They have the same rights as all the other Palestinians.
They are also Orthodox Jews who argue the Torah. That Israel is a blasphemy of the Torah. That it is, they argue so.
You see, I'm not speaking about that, but I'm speaking about they are Palestinians.
Yes, right.
And they are saying that they are Palestinians.
Well, that's interesting that he said that, and you are completely, Torah Karta is completely something different, so we're going to want to talk about what it is that is different about the Torah Karta. And again, gentlemen, welcome very much to the conversation. We just wanted that little piece about Yasser Arafat because it's so timely and so forth. But Rabbi Weiss, maybe you could explain to the audience who's viewing Torah Karta, what it is, what it represents, what do you represent as far as Judaism is concerned that sets you apart and makes Mr. Arafat ready to have one of you members become a member of his cabinet. What is there different about the Torah Karta and the bulk of the world Jewish community, if you could?
Yes, with God's help, I should be able to explain this properly.
All right.
It should be understood in this short time. If you noticed, he said that he believes in the prophets of Moses. And being so, then we have, that is the key word here, that we have no differences. We are the followers of God and the Torah that has been given to us by Moses. We will not go away from the teachings of the Torah with one iota, God willing. And that is where the essence of the Torah Karta of orthodoxy is, of a Jew.
So you think this is different than the bulk of the Jewish community, or the Zionists have gone away from the proper interpretation of the Torah? Is this what you say?
Yes, 100%. This, Zionism, well, I think maybe we should just like...
maybe go right from the beginning, because we're just talking to the citizenry here. They won't know, Yes.
We were handed the Torah, we were given the Torah on Mount Sinai by Moses from God to the Jewish people. And we have been given the commandments of the Torah that we must follow, and the Jewish people accepted upon themselves to follow these commandments. And then God gave us the land of Israel, that we should live there and serve Him properly in that land, and He called it a holy land, and we have commandments that have to do with the land, of giving it a tenth of what grows in the land and so forth.
And you're talking now the Second Temple and Solomon,
or before the first history. Temple, and then the temple was built by King Solomon, King David. And then afterwards, we had prophets that kept on instructing us how we should act and if we're following God's teachings. And they told us that they started warning us after a period of time that the Jewish people are sinning, and God is warning the Jewish people that they will be sent out of the land, expelled from the land, if they will continue sinning.
From their sins, because of their sins, the golden calf and things.
It was different. Well, that was sins, continual sins, because that was still when they were in the desert of before they went into Israel, the golden calf. But for their sins, they were always, for the golden calf, they were punished that they were not allowed to go into the land of Israel, except 40 years later. And some children of Israel tried to go into the land, and they were killed immediately.
I wonder if this is worth, if you don't mind, if we can just go a little dialogue and so, because everybody's a sinner. I mean, all Christians will recognize that we all have sinned. We have to keep track. Was there, in your interpretation or the interpretation of the Torah, the way you see it, was it the Jews were particularly egregious sinners or something, or were they sinful like the way mankind tends to be and have to redeem themselves as best they can and so forth?
Well, we believe we've been taught that the children of Abraham, Isaac, and the forefathers of Judaism accepted upon themselves. The Jewish people accepted upon to do a nation of priests, that we should be serving God fully through the day, 24 hours a day, with the many commandments, 613 commandments. This encompasses a Jewish life, and therefore we are being judged more stringently, I would say, because there's many commandments that we have to watch. If we don't hold these commandments, then we are punished. In other words, a good Gentile, Gentile is a good and a bad person, right?
Yeah.
If he doesn't, and if he doesn't,
or sometimes both in the same person,
right?
Yeah.
And the people have weak points and so forth.
Yeah.
But the Jewish people were given certain commandments more than another person, and if we don't follow them, then we consider that we're not being good, even though if a Gentile person would not be doing these things and so forth, it wouldn't be a problem.
So you hold yourself to a higher order in a certain sense?
Because we're giving more commands. You can be a very good Gentile, as long as, but you can work on the Sabbath, while a Jewish person, if he lights a candle on the Sabbath, he's sinning with considered a cardinal sin, and he's just lighting a candle, because that is what God, and we accepted upon us. All the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, and we believe our souls were there from all the generations to accept this.
You used to have some Gentile to turn on the light in the synagogue or something. I forget what you call that. Somebody, I forget. Yeah,
right.
Shabbos.
Right.
Not
a Jew who can do it.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. For us, it's a sin.
Right.
So anyway, the Jewish people, like you just mentioned, that they did the golden calf and so forth. When the Jewish people sinned, when the Jewish people said they would like to go into Israel, if the God told us we couldn't in the desert, so they were killed because they weren't allowed to go up then. So that's a side issue. Let me just get back into this. When the Jewish people went into the land of Israel and they watched the commandments, everything was good for them. When they sinned, the prophets warned us, and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and so forth, that because of your sins you will be sent into exile. It didn't help. God saw that the Jewish people didn't better their ways. We were sent into exile. Yes, you could say that.
This is in Yiddish.
And because of our sins, as soon as we were sent into exile, God told us through the prophets that I am going to give you fresh commandments, different things that you have to know how you should act, how you should behave yourselves in exile, because it's a different type of a life than when you were in your land. In that land, he told us, you are now amongst other nations. You must be loyal citizens in every nation that you are placed. You must be...
I mean, this is after the exile.
Exactly. The teachers in the prophet spoke to the Jewish people. You must be peaceful, law-abiding, and respectful citizens to every other nation. You have to act very well with them.
Now, this is in the Torah, or this is in the later or some of the Talmudic
interpretations of the prophets. It's clearly spelled out. And they told, and the rabbis taught us that was straight from God, that you have to be patient. Do not try to leave the exile ahead of time. Because exile...
And they had it spelled out within the Torah, if I understand. If you don't mind, within the Torah, the terms by which at the end time, there will be the ingathering of the Jewish people within the land of Israel that's promised to them, and the terms and the means by which that's to be achieved, in your idea, is spelled out clearly in the Torah, and has been held to over the ages.
In the prophets. In the books of the prophets.
Right. In the prophets.
In the prophets.
In the prophets.
And the prophets. Thank you, Rabbi Feldman. Yeah.
Right. So,
and then there would be world peace.
Yes. Well, in other words, what we sent into exile, and God said, when you will better your ways, it's like a bitter medicine, for instance. When a father gives a child medicine, the kid cries, doesn't want to take that medicine because it's bitter. But if the father would be a bad father if he would give him candies instead of the medicine. And we appreciate that, being that we know that everything is from the hands of God.
We now being the Torah Karta and...
Jewish Orthodox people, the ones who are following the Torah. We accept upon ourselves, I'll just transgress one other word, that besides that we believe as Torah Jews, we believe that there's a God, we believe that he's constantly with us. He didn't just create the world and leave it. Everything that happens to the person, any human being, and to everything on this world is directly from the hands of God.
You feel this way. Would it be right to say that you are, in a certain sense, in relation to the Torah, you have a fundamentalist faith in the Torah? That you are a fundamentalist kind of attitude toward events in the world, as opposed to there's much more secular interpretation that's becoming more popular in the modern world.
We believe exactly to the words of the Torah. We don't go away from that, and we do believe, like I say, we know, this is the fact, that everything that happens is directly from the hands of God. He's watching constantly, whether it be punishment or reward. This exile is a whole-encompassing punishment for what God told us we have sinned in the times of the temple, which was because there wasn't enough brotherly love. There was idol worship and different things, and these things that was spelled out in the books of the prophets, that we are in exile, and part of the repentance is the acceptance of the exile, that we should believe and know it is from God, and this is what God wants us to be here.
At the end of the Seder, the Jews, they say, next year in Israel.
Right.
Everyone dreams for Israel.
Exactly.
Right?
We pray. You see, part of what God wants of us, which is spelled out now again our teachings, is that we should pray and hope for the coming of the Messiah. Because what does it mean? What does it mean, this coming of the Messiah?
Well,
what do we pray for? We are praying. A Jew wants to serve God totally. This is what we want. We believe that God put us on this world to serve Him, and that is the reason of His creation of the world. Now, so therefore, the coming of the Mashiach would be the commencement, would be the accomplishment of what the world is for. That every Jew, every person, not just Jew, but every Gentile at that time, when the Mashiach will come, we believe every person will recognize that there is one God and the world is His. He's created and He's watching it, and we are here to serve Him. And all the nations together at that time will serve God. And therefore, that is. It would mean that when Mashiach comes, we will not have to go up to Israel with force, with the military, or try to convince other people, yeah, this is Mashiach, and this is what that we have to go up to the land, help us go up, or let us go up. No. At that time, everybody together will recognize, and we will go up without any military force.
I wonder if we could address this, maybe some of the others could jump into a little if you want, but I mean, in terms of the Torah reading of that, which is given to you as the word, a divine word, as it is given to you, the terms or the means by which this the appearance of Mashiach or Messiah, or the means by which you will relate to the world in that time, that end time, are clearly spelled out in your view? I know a couple of years ago, Israel now, which is a Zionist country representing the Jewish community, and there's a great debate and so forth, there was a popular song, the most popular song in Israel one year was, "The Mashiach isn't coming, he isn't even phoning." They were, in a certain sense, saying that this idea of the Mashiach coming is something that secular people don't believe in. These things, these are legends from the past. We've now moved into a secular world. We have to understand things in a new way. And I also wonder, how do you relate, you people relate to the, your Orthodox, how do you relate to the conservative reform and the broad general secular movement? So many Jewish people going now into medicine and all kinds of other things rather than just studying Torah.
Yeah, you've touched on the basic issues. You're really to the point. You've touched on exactly what we want to bring out here. I'm going to answer you, but just let me finish this. That I would like to say that being that we accept that this exile and everything is from God's hand, that we are here because God wants us to better our ways. And this was the whole belief of the rabbis, through all the Jewish people, through all the generations till now. And we've had great rabbis, Maimonides, big thinkers, people of power. Nobody tried to overstep this boundary. Nobody tried to leave exile when there was many problems. There was, in the time of the Crusades, the Jewish people were persecuted. Nobody tried to use this solution of making their own land.
Even though they yearned for the return to Jerusalem.
And even they could have done it. We've have written books that there was times that the Jewish people were very strong in certain countries. They could have made their own country, but they didn't want to. They were asked this question. The rabbis did certain responses in the questions.
And they didn't want to for divinely conceived notions of why they should not.
Because God commanded it. They said it is totally forbidden.
And that belief was there over the 2,000 years of diaspora, you feel?
Yes,
that's been the condition of the conscience of the Jewish people almost in total, right? And they were in turn connected to the rabbis, and they respected the rabbis, right?
And so it's totally accepted.
All the rabbis.
Yeah, that the only way, the only means of ending this exile is through repentance and serving God properly, and then God will, which we pray for every day, that He'll see us the proper time, and then we will be able to leave this exile.
In its time, like a pregnancy. It has to happen at the right time, right? You say.
And then there will be no military force, not a single bullet will be shot. Everybody together will recognize as one. God will peacefully serve God together. That is what it means, redemption from exile. Zionism
you started about 100 years ago.
And they were atheists. Their problem was that they were atheists.
Why is that a problem? I mean,
well, you asked, I'm going to connect that with reform and conservative. Atheism is a problem because God has a purpose in this world. We are here to serve Him. He gave us the Torah. The Jewish people are connected to God. We are bound to God through a bond that we've accepted upon ourselves. and that we will never break, that we will always be attached to God. This is the Torah. Now, this Torah is what our whole life is, what we're ready to give our lives for, to serve God with this Torah. We cannot break away from this.
And this is the thing, this is the Torah true consciousness was characteristic of the vast majority of the Jewish community in exile in England, in Russia, and in Poland, and in Ashkenazi, and the Sephardim. All of them was of this mind, and something has changed in the last 100 years or so, and there's something, this transformation, Rabbi Dome, I believe, writes about, is a change from being Torah true to being secular. Is that the big problem?
Excuse me, the whole, not that, the whole, up until the Reform movement of 200 years ago, the complete Jewish community was in this.
Was in that consciousness.
Positively.
And there's been a change in the modern experience, which is, in your view, is a blasphemy? Is it fair to say, is it too strong a term to say that the Zionist idea and the Zionist notion is a blasphemy of the Torah as you see it?
And blasphemy and heresy.
You see that, and a heresy.
They're going away from what meaning from Jew, what means a Jew. A Jew is only with the Torah.
This is a serious business.
This is an uprooting of everything, of the whole.
Of Judaism.
So you people, even though you're obviously you're very Jewish, you know, you're a Hasidic, you're, and so you're very Jewish, but you are the strongest opponents of Israel and Zionism, perhaps there is that's in the world, more so than the Palestinians who, and so forth. You are strong opponents of it based on that. And the group, Natura Carta, stands for, maybe you could tell us what that is. What do the words translate and so forth?
Protectors, guardians of the city.
Guardians of the city.
Yeah,
the city
well, at that time it meant of Jerusalem.
Jerusalem so much in the news now, isn't it?
Right. Well, because being that we say that the only way to be a proper Jew is to follow the Torah. It's not our opinion. This, and you look in the books of the rabbis and Maimonides and so forth, the Rambam and all the books, that if one person strays, and the prophets, if one strays, yes, this is what a Jew is only proper when he's serving God properly. We were sent into exile because of our sins. Now,
a Reformer or conservative rabbi, there's been huge movements away from the strictly Orthodox. They will see the Torah and they will interpret it differently, and they very much support Ben Gurion.
Yes.
And the establishment of Israel. They suffered the Holocaust. They said, never again. We will not be weak. We will not allow this to happen. We will set this up. And 99% of the Jews of the 99.9% of the Jews of the world are totally in support of the idea that they must find security in the state of Israel, and that this is a conflict as far as you are concerned.
Excuse me, they don't interpret it differently. They just cut out pieces.
Exactly.
They just cut out pieces.
They don't interpret it differently. They just cut out pieces.
They do say they interpret, but again, like I say, till the Reform movement, there was a sinner. There were Jewish people who sinned through all the generations. But to refute, to take the Torah and say it different, to interpret it different. The Torah, there is a way of interpreting which you have to follow the Jewish books and the teachings, the prophets and the rabbis, the Shulchan Aruch it's called. Then you'll see that there is no way to interpret it different. It's laughable. What they're trying to interpret, the Reform movement did try to use certain verses, but they're like the Krayats, the Tzedokим, it was called, who wanted to translate, and they were thrown out from the Jewish movement. They were spit out because there is no way of translating it different than the way it's been taught to us through the rabbis.
Well, we in Christianity have we have a Catholic interpretation, we have a Protestant interpretation, and then you get into the Protestant it's almost as bad as Trotskyites. I mean, there's so many interpretations of what God is saying. The Calvinists say this, the Lutherans say this, and so on. So maybe it's just like that. There's an interpretation of a truth. You're saying your interpretation is true. The Zionists will say their interpretation is true, and it's just a matter of who's right.
Again, but Christianity,
how can you make a judgment?
Well,
I mean, how can you say this true is true and this one isn't? You know?
Well, Christianity is also using the Bible according to the way they believe it's translated.
Yeah, and they've got a million different.
Jews.
Well, I know that's.
Why not? Why you could just say
we're human beings. We're all bipedal, you know, and we all interpret things in a different kind of way.
Yes, but you're saying, just like you're saying, you're asking why Reform movement can't be also Judaism. You might as well say Christianity is Judaism. Once there is a certain way that we have been taught the Shulchan Aruch, if you follow that is what it's been passed down from Moses on Mount Sinai, and there's a way how you can interpret it, how it works. That system, if you follow it,
all through the generations, there was no deviating from the
It's an accepted way it has to be translated. This, if it's accepted, then the major older rabbis will say that this person is translating properly.
Was it true when Herzl, wasn't he about 100 years ago, when Theodor Herzl in Russia, I think he got it started, and he started this. He was just a small group of revolutionaries who had this idea, and all rabbis, all Jews, were totally against it.
Right.
And then slowly more and more came to be in favor of the idea as it got more and more successful, and also then the Hitler Holocaust. Was such a tremendous thing, you know. These all contributed to it.
Yeah, I think just give me two. We're flying from idea to idea. Let's say we have the Reform movement that they started a new thing that they tried to change. They tried to change the whole idea what a Jew is, what ties him to God, what makes him a Jew.
That's still a big question. Who is a Jew?
Right.
Yeah, but
I mean, the question in Israel.
Yes, us not changing. They changing the way from Moshe to today.
And the
whole time.
Now this was refuted. Like I say, there's a chain of command, a chain of how one could translate the Torah, and the rabbis who teach us the chains, all of it at that time, of course they said that this is impossible, this is wrong. Now after Reform, that made the Jewish people weak. That's why Zionism was able to be born. The idea of Zionism was that they didn't believe again in the Torah the way it was taught. They didn't believe that God is watching else and so
forth. Much of the world is becoming secular.
Right.
Not only Jews, but Christians, and the secularism is the modern way in which the world is oriented. It's all business,
but that
money,
doesn't make them
that
right.
Doesn't make it right.
Well, all right. I'm just saying it's not the Jews alone that are going secular.
Right.
And the Zionist movement became secular, and Israel itself is secular.
Well, Zionism
it's in keeping with the modern world.
Zionism didn't become secular. Zionism was, like I say, they took the idea that they broke away from the teachings of the Torah, believing that God is watching everything, that God is running this world, and that punishment, like I say, comes from the hand of God. When they refuted that, so then he had a problem. We accept lovingly the punishments that happen. We know that we have to repent. Everything is from God. We have to accept it. He couldn't, being that he refuted that the punishment is from God, so he looked at all the persecution of Judaism as a problem that needs a solution. His solution, being that he refuted God, was to make a state and run away and make your own army. Now that is a blasphemy.
You mean the Zionist enterprise itself?
That is a mutiny against the whole essence of that there is a Godhead of Judaism.
And most all the Jews felt that way from religious belief.
Because it is very simple.
And then slowly it grew.
Right.
It grew more and more.
I'll explain that
and
to
more
you.
and more and more and more to where now it's the accepted idea of the world.
Well, I'll explain that to you.
And that's what they're talking about in Camp David now.
Well, I'll explain to you. Being that at that time all the Jewish quarters, the religious Jewish, refused to accept them. But unfortunately, by Holocaust, when the Jewish people were unfortunately mostly wiped out, and our great teachers, and the Jewish people were confused, so then Zionism...
Not only the Jewish people, a great deal of the world was confused by the irrational horror of that.
And they were hurting. And the Zionist movement at that time approached them and said, look, we can save you. And people were confused and hurt. So they grabbed at that, and that's why they were able to grow so much.
Well, maybe that's not such a bad idea. If they're instead of going passively and marching into death to stand up, be strong rather than weak. And maybe that's not such a bad position. And many people think that's a good idea, and they pulled it off, and they did it. They became successful, and they've now got 200 atomic bombs.
You are right. When you're looking at it as a secular view, you're looking at that. But if you look at
most of the world sees the world that way now.
Right. But if you believe that there is a God, and so it's like, I'll give you an example. You take a dog who's being hit with a stick, and he bites the stick. There's a master behind the stick. That is exactly why it is a mutiny against God, and it brings the ire of God on the Jewish people. Because being that they're saying we're not going to walk passively into the concentration camps, you are refuting that whatever happened was from the hands of God, and by having a mutiny, trying to leave exile with our rabbis saying it's forbidden, you'll be able to have a solution. Could that be a solution?
Well, you could say Hitler was an evil man, and there was a secular balance of power, and there was a thing that was directed and scapegoating against Jews, and it was an evil thing that happened in this world.
It
didn't have to do, if it did or didn't, there's secular people who say he was an evil man, and that's it, and you got to get some power.
Was there a God behind this?
Well, some people would say they do not think so. The scientific community would not. Or if there were God behind it, there would be different interpretations of what God's trying to tell us. They would say that you must fight against the forces of evil. And Hitler was evil.
Well, firstly,
that would be God's message.
Right.
You know?
Well, firstly, Hitler.
Not that the Jews were being punished. What you're trying to say? The Jews were being punished in the Holocaust because of Zionism?
We were punished. Many rabbis said that, but basically, whatever the
that's
the
really
reason was,
putting the shoe on the other foot.
Surely, but whatever the
blaming the victim.
well, whatever the first of all, I want to go back that Herzl made the idea of Zionism not because of Hitler, but
no, Hitler wasn't there
yet.
Yeah.
But and so to say that therefore they should make Zionism. Zionism was formed, like I say, because they were atheists and they went to look for a solution because they had a problem which we don't have. The problem was they were atheists. They didn't see any way to escape persecution. When they didn't realize that persecution is our medicine that God is giving us and we have to accept. So what I'm trying to bring out is they were atheists, and that is what Zionism is basically, an atheist idea, and that's what formed it. Later, like I tried to say, it was accepted amongst Jews. Now you're asking if it could be a solution. Like you mentioned, many rabbis said that spiritually it was the cause, because God said if you will try to leave exile ahead of time, you will run away from my punishment. If you will try to leave exile, then you will be like the animals of the field. And that is what happened to us. We were made into bars of soap. We see it's directly God's punishment. Because
of the Zionist impetus?
Because, like I say, that
because they were beginning to stir and say,
many rabbis said that.
This is really putting the blame on this is not just self-hatred. They said you're self-hatred. You're hating the Jewish thing because of
hating Zionism. The Zionism caused it.
And there was many other
Zionism caused it. Not Nazism caused it. Nazism caused it. Nazism was what happened in Germany.
Zionism caused Nazism.
Well, I don't know. Irrational things on the part of evil people who were running and grabbed power and got power.
Nothing happens, we believe. Punishment, like I said, is from God. Why did God give it to this educated,
punishment and reward?
Yes. Why did this educated, sophisticated, highly elite nation of Germany all of a sudden become such animals?
Well,
what happened?
William Shire and a whole bunch of people are trying to figure out the irrationality of what went on.
We figured it out. It wasn't absolute madness. There is a method to this madness because God wanted the Jewish people to be punished because of reform, because Jews went away from the Torah, and because of Zionism. That is what our rabbis taught us. And we happen to know materialistically. I don't want to get to so many different things.
Yeah, I know there's so much.
That we feel that they put in the hand because that they to help Zionism. We have books called Minametzer and different books that when the Jewish people tried to be saved, the rabbis tried to save the Jewish people. The Zionists thwarted their efforts because they didn't want so many Orthodox Jews there, and they said we should be looked as pity in the eyes of the nations. They will give us the land. One cow, the leader, Green Baum from the Zionist movement said that one cow is worth more than
one cow in Israel.
In Palestine is worth more than I forgot how many Jews, 1,000 Jews. He didn't want to save these Jews because
they were committed to the idea of Zionism. So they were strongly committed to this idea that they had a political idea.
Right, and they felt that the Jewish people being destroyed in Europe will give them a land.
And it's become firmly established now in the world. The geopolitical reality of the world is there, and that's what they're talking about. Mr. Barak and Mr. Arafat are talking about in Jerusalem and the Middle East now.
Let me go to that. I want to go step by step. Being that I say this is an atheist movement, and it's because the whole idea is that they don't believe in punishment and reward from God.
Now, if I may, it's particularly the Jewish you're talking about, or are you talking about the world? The world has become, it's called a modernist movement, it's called modernism, it's called secularism, it's called science, it's called Albert Einstein and relativity, and it's called the Jewish people studying medicine and doing things rather than Talmud. Well, they're studying all kinds of things in the real world, and they're building a modernist world that is materialistically based and grounded, and the world is becoming that way.
It could influence
It's not only the Jews.
Yes, no, but you could be modern and a very good Jew. Modern is not not
a lot of people who are modern think that the traditional way, Israel Shock, we did a program with him, he said 2,000 years of the oppression of religion on the people. The pressure of the religion is taken off the people, and then they can flower and become doctors, writers, lawyers,
and
all kinds
of
the Jews. And look at what the Jewish community, they've been released from the bonds of tie to the religion, and they now have been able to flourish and create every field intellectually like no other group in the world. It's a great thing that they're saying this modernism.
Contrast. It is not against Judaism.
Except that they're not. A lot of those people that are doing that are not particularly tied to religion in a traditional sense.
Well, it has an influence. A lot of it has the television. Different things have influence, television and so forth. But like I say, the Turei Karta came when they saw that the Zionist movement started moving up to the land of Palestine, and they wanted to encroach upon the settlements there and and make the Jews to accept this heresy against God, to try to leave exile ahead of time. So they formed an organization that is like I say, loosely the Jewish people, Orthodox people, are totally against it. The Neturei Karta were the vocal ones, the watchers of the guardians of the city.
They've been there from the beginning,
huh? Right.
Yeah.
And they were, even before the state formed, they were there to fight, to be more vocal and come out. So anybody who's vocal and comes out against the state of Israel is given that name, Neturei Karta, the guardians of the city, to protect against...
If you're Jewish.
Right, these encroaches upon our religion.
And if you do it from a religious perspective.
Right.
Because the Palestinians will be against, the Arabs will be against it, the Muslims will be against it, and other people will be against it geopolitically, but the Jews are against the Neturei Karta,
Right, and like you said, you brought it out so beautifully and so eloquently. You said that the Zionists themselves had a song, how they're refuting Mashiach. They had their own song.
There was a popular song.
Right.
You know, the popular music,
that is the
rock
point.
and roll,
that
and
is the
discotheques and
they
all
are
this.
atheists. They refute the teachings of God. They refute our whole being, our whole reason of existence in this world. That we're here to serve God.
So does much of the modern scientific world.
But our problem is with the Jewish people to bring them back, and automatically we will accomplish that the other nations will look at us again as a nation of priests, like we were till the Zionists, and they will learn from us good things. But how could they learn from us good things if we become a militant nation, unfortunately, according to them?
Well, it has become a militant nation, and instead of being passive, instead of being weak, you've become, the Jewish representation in Israel has become strong. They are now a superpower.
Well,
they have
that is
200 atomic bombs.
Yes.
There is no way that there's any doubt that it can be done. So why, now that it's become so strong, should they not, should they all of a sudden just say, no, we're not going to have this, we're not going to do what we've done, what we've achieved? And how are they going to do it? Nationalism is very strong. It's one of the strongest nationalist movements in the world.
Can I ask you something? If Hitler was very strong when at the height of his power, would you say, well, you are so strong, you are so powerful, so why should you change your system and everything? Of course, there's nothing to do with it. Power doesn't make you right.
Okay.
You can be
power, might does not make right.
Right. No. So they are against God. The whole thing
is this is not the Jewish nation. They should go to Uganda and make a country.
But they wanted to, not Uganda, but not to go to Uganda.
Not the Jewish nation.
Judaism is belief on trust God.
So Israel is not a Jewish
nation? It is an atheistic nation.
It is an atheistic
nation. It has nothing to do with the Jewish nation.
They cannot
Rabbi Deutsch from Palestine, no?
So they cannot, in other words, basically, in 2 words, Zionism is materialism.
Judaism.
It is the contrast. It is the exact opposite of Judaism. Judaism is spirituality, serving God, through the Torah, trust in God, belief in God, serving God. Zionism's goal is materialism, a military function, a military strength, a land. And this is totally in opposition
like
to contrast and the transformation of Judaism. And they
it is a transformation of Judaism.
You are people who are dyed in the wool, as it were, Jewish folk, and yet you are the most vociferously opposed to
Zionism,
to Israel and Zionism of any people in the world. You were at the UN, right?
Yes.
You were at the UN some time ago, and there's a videotape that we're going to show here of you demonstrating at the UN. And it's about 5 minutes or so, and it's a little grainy again and everything like that. But it's and it might be a little bit hard for some people to see because you got these signs saying Israel is evil and these kind of things. It might be a little tricky for some people to watch. But maybe we could run that tape, all right? And then we can come back and we can talk about this because there's so many things. And I know it's really hard to try and talk about all these things in such a short period of time. But let's run that tape now. Then, if we could, if we set up it to be the tape of these. It's an Neturei Karta. We're talking members of the Neturei Karta. This is a demonstration. It must have been around 1990 or something like that at the United Nations.
Palestinian people, we are with you. We have come to participate and express our solidarity with your cause. We vehemently condemn the atrocities atrocities being perpetrated against your people. We are appalled by the bloodshed, by the consistent killing and massacres. We recognize fully your right to the entire land to set up a state, one state of Palestine, in all of Palestine, only for the Palestinian people. We are speaking in the name of all the authentic, genuine Jewish people throughout the world who know and recognize that Zionism is just the opposite of Judaism. Zionism is atheism. Zionism is nationalism. Zionism has nothing to do with the Torah or with the Jewish people. They have stolen the holy name Israel. They have taken away Palestine from its rightful owners, the Palestinian people. We look forward to the time when Jewish people can live in Palestine under the Palestinian flag, loyal, patriotic citizens, devoid of any Zionistic or political overtone. Once again, Palestinian people, Palestine belongs only to the Palestinians. Wir lieben uns, an der zionistische Medina in der Zionisten haben es Kassim Zeichen zu Ihnen, die Ihnen haben es Kassim Zeichen zu sein. We are only repeating once again that the state of Israel and the Zionist movement have absolutely nothing to do with the Jewish people. You understand that? Their crimes are crimes against the Jewish people also. They are undermining the Jewish religion. They are killing Palestinian people. They are stolen the lands from the Palestinians. And they are corrupting and destroying the Jewish religion. The Jewish people want to live in peace and harmony with the Palestinian people. We recognize fully their right to sovereignty, to independent statehood, and to full expression of self-determination. We are speaking in the name of all the authentic, genuine Jewish people throughout the world who know and recognize that Zionism is just the opposite of Judaism. Zionism is atheism. Zionism is nationalism. Zionism has nothing to do with the Torah or with the Jewish people. They have stolen the holy name Israel. They have taken away Palestine from its rightful owners, the Palestinian people. We are only repeating once again that the state of Israel and the Zionist movement have absolutely nothing to do with the Jewish people. You understand that? Their crimes are crimes against the Jewish people also. They are undermining the Jewish religion. They are killing Palestinian people. They have stolen the lands from the Palestinians. And they are corrupting and destroying the Jewish religion. The Jewish people want to live in peace and harmony with the Palestinian people. We recognize fully their right to sovereignty, to independent statehood, and to full expression of self-determination.
Wow, wow, wow! That's really pretty unusual footage and so forth that you have there, and you know that presented a good deal of the basic thinking of what you have, and you do it in a vociferous way. You must get a great deal of reaction from people who think that you're just sort of in a different way of seeing the world than most people.
You see, one of our commandments is that when God's name is being profaned, we must go out and sanctify His name. Profaning God's name means many different things. And first of all, somebody is desecrating the Sabbath, even though he may not look bad to. He's not killing anybody. He's smoking on Sabbath. We must go and say there is a God. He does not let us have this. To smoke.
Now that wouldn't bother me. You see,
you're right.
Somebody smoked on the Sabbath.
And still we have to go out and say that to the world. So even though you may understand secularly that the Jewish people should have a state and so forth, being that we know that God told us as Jews that we are not allowed to have that, and that we are defeating the purpose of exile, and we can't leave exile even if we wanted to, we have the commandment to go out and be vociferous and let the nations know that they are falsely presenting the Jewish people.
Why must
and it is a transformation of Judaism. The Zionism is not what Judaism. They are transforming what a Jew is. A Jew is a peaceful, as a person, is a peaceful, peace-loving, and loyal to the other nation. And we believe in God. And we believe in God. And we believe in that He's watching us. Now, so we went out there. We wanted that the nations to know. And when we do that, then the nations we want them to see that we're not that military nation. I think if you look, you'll see that the world, much anti-Semitism, of course, is caused, especially in the Muslim nations and all over, because they look at the Jews as a militant nation. And look how many people have died, how many Jewish people, the Israeli soldiers, thousands and thousands, and how many Palestinians, how much bloodshed there has been, all for this ideal of Zionism, which is not according to. We believe that it can never serve. If you say they have a strong military, it will never help even the strong military. As you see, they tried peace movements, first left, then right. First they tried to take over land, then they give back land. You see, that never works. Why won't it work? It cannot work because it is against the divine ordinances, against the divine decree, and God will not let it work. So even though you look at them so strong and militarily, such a powerful thing, it won't work. And you'll see in the long run it won't work because our rabbis, the prophets teach us.
לימינו מלכי ארץ, בכל יושבי סבל, כי יבוא צער ואויב בשערי ירושלים.
What does this mean?
That's Yiddish.
That's Yiddish,
Exactly, but this can English.
That they won't. Right, they won't believe.
The nations of the world.
The nations of that they won't believe. They won't believe that it's possible that it could happen. That they should be able to come the enemies. They were so powerful at the time of the exile, the beginning of that, when the Jews were still in Jerusalem. They couldn't believe. The nations could not believe that it could be possible that such a strong, mighty nation could be handed over into the hands of their enemies. They were so, at that time, like one of the leading powers of the world, that they should be able to fall under the hands of their enemies. The same thing here.
It was divine. It was divine.
Everyone knew
military
that
strength.
It was a divine decree.
When the time of Hanukkah, when the Jews were so militarily weak, and it was given over the hands of the mighty into the hands of the weak. We say that every year, Hanukkah. And they use that for their purposes, the Zionists, when it's so ludicrous, because they try to bring a symbol of theirs, the Hanukkah, our holiday, when the Maccabees, when they were Jews. The Maccabees were a small number, a very small number, and they took over the mighty enemies, because we have nothing to do with the military strength. When God wants us to be strong, to have a land, we can have a land. When He doesn't want us, all the kings and all the soldiers cannot take over. So that's why I say they'll never have peace. They'll never be able to accomplish. That's why thousands of people die and everything, because no matter how strong they are, they cannot go against the hands of God, because God runs this world.
And you say that the ingathering at the end of time, in a certain sense now, or the time of the Moshiach, right, that you've been holding on for thousands of years that this would be coming. Is it a blasphemy to suggest that maybe we live in that time?
No, because
and that perhaps we're just preparing. We come now to where we have such destructive capability. The world is being changed in such a tremendous pattern. You say that it would be a world in which there is justice.
Yes, but it will not.
It would be a just world. We're far from that now.
It is because you're doing. You see,
I'm trying to get it. Maybe we live in the time of the Moshiach. Maybe Moshiach will come next week.
But are you trying to say that they're preparing for this? Are you trying? Zionism cannot be the preparation for this, because first of all, it is atheist against God, and secondly, because like I said before, when Mashiach comes, there will not be a military. We will be fighting other nations to gain the upper hand. All the nations together will go peacefully and agree there's one God. we have to serve God together.
And why would the
just
nation? Why is the book of Torah?
Right. He says, you see, you're trying to understand it with your mind of today. When he says, just like today you understand materialism, the mindset will be different, and then you will be understand the idea of spiritual, and it says that the plowshares will be beaten.
Not only uplifted, but a whole different,
right. The swords will be beaten to plowshares. It says at that time.
So we can't say
we can't comprehend
and we must be led there by Moshe.
Right. When God's name will then be revealed to all the nations.
So what now you, if I may, the problem is we don't have enough time. We could talk hours and hours. I mean, we could talk
60
for hours
instead of 60 minutes.
days. We could talk, but I mean, we don't have this much time. But you've been like for instance, you must get some controversy. So like if we could, maybe they can come in on a camera here. Maybe they're going to put it on camera too. But you met with you get along with Louis Farrakhan.
Right.
Now there are a lot of Jewish people who think Louis Farrakhan is anti-Semitic, and some of these other people are, and there's a great deal of tension between them. You know,
he's a very big anti-Zionist.
Oh, right. Well, he's anti-Zionist, but he probably doesn't find many Jews who are. You're probably the few Jews that are Jews.
That is going along with our theme. Our theme is that instead of fighting nations and causing animosity all over the world and bloodshed...
We got a picture of you meeting in Chicago then, right?
Right. So instead
of...
The Jewish organizations were constantly fighting him. Instead of doing that, follow like our rabbis taught us through the generations. Go approach him, speak nicely to him, and
did he receive you well?
And he received us very well. He said, "I've been waiting for years that Jewish rabbis should come and speak to me and sit down. If I have something to apologize for, I will apologize. If I did something wrong, tell me and we'll discuss it. But don't come over to me and with a macho, the way the Zionists saying, you must apologize and you must do this. It's against the grain of Judaism, and it causes animosity in the whole world.
You say it's against the grain of Judaism. What does the grain of Judaism tell us of the way is to be? Is to be peaceful and quiet and what, you know?
Exactly, to be peaceful, approach your enemies and try to befriend him and realize that God put us in exile, and that if there's an enemy, it's because we've sinned, then go over to him, speak to him nicely, and tell him that you want to be good friends and you don't want to fight him.
Now, what about some people who would say, look, aren't you putting too much of all the sins of the world on your own shoulders and saying everybody's fine except the Jews?
Well,
and the Jews are doing all these things terrible? Some people would say that's like, you know, a self-hating kind of attitude toward the Jewish people or something because they're so uplifted, and that all these other evil things are going on in the world, and you say it's all the fault of the Jews?
Everything that happens to us...
Because of the Jews have not listened to the rabbis who are telling them the Torah through Judaism? Is that what your view is?
We're saying
that's a fanatical position.
Well, don't forget, this is our lives. Everything that happens to us, everything that happens to us is from the hands of God. Everything. Just like everything that happens to you is from the hands of God. You have to delve into your actions and see why God is doing everything that he's doing for you. Every good thing you have to praise him for and be thankful for. Everything bad that happens, God is totally good. Why does he do something that's not good? We have to understand maybe what we sin in, and if he's not doing to us not good, he's doing to us something to remind us and to teach us to repent. When we went to him, we went to Farrakhan, so we just refuted with that the Zionists, that the psychology is wrong, that the whole ideals are wrong. Here they said, we'll fight him, and they try to say that it will be good. Fighting him will accomplish. You see that even according to their way of thinking, that secularly it doesn't work. Just like you're fighting Palestinians, it doesn't work. Have thousands of people have been killed. It doesn't even work secularly, I'm saying. Here we went to Farrakhan. Right after we met with him, and we've had a 3-hour meeting, and he spoke so nicely, and he apologized. He said, maybe I shouldn't have expressed, I'm not quoting word for word, but he said I should have not said I shouldn't have used the word Jews. We should have differentiated between Zionists and Jews, because he realized that the Jewish people are not. And afterwards, whenever he spoke, he had a big
because he had very friendly with you.
Right, and he saw that it's totally wrong that the Jewish people could get it. And afterwards, he had a big on the day, what is it called?
The Savior's Day.
The Savior's Day, when he spoke, he didn't speak one word against the Jews. And when he spoke before that, he said he'd like to have peace with the other people. People said that, well, maybe he's changed his ways because he's sick. No, maybe he changed his ways because he realized that we can get along, and there's no reason to have...
Yeah, but some people would say you'll be able to get along as long as you just just don't exert yourself and have any kind of power in the world and allow yourself to have another Holocaust develop. If you're going to allow yourself to have another Holocaust and not stand up and be strong, then people will say, sure, fine. Some people would see that.
I'll change that a little bit. I understand, but I'll change that a little bit. Instead of attacking him, then we can get along. But instead of allowing ourselves not to be killed has nothing to do with his animosity. But
not his necessarily. Hitler might have said the same thing.
Yes,
if you just don't pick up that rifle,
but
don't do anything to defend yourself.
You said not allow myself. It's not that I can allow myself to be killed or not, because I can, by serving God, then God will not allow us to be killed. But you cannot take a gun in your hands and allow yourself or not. You understand? In other words, that's what Zionists said. They can allow themselves to do what they want. No.
Yeah.
If you serve God, then God will protect you and He won't allow you. But if you do what they're doing, then you'll have all the king's horses and all the king's men will not protect you, and it will only cause, like I say, strife in the world, and animosity.
And you were, I understand.
And we were in Iran, and that was a good example.
You were Iran, we only got a couple minutes left. But
so like I'm saying, we just, and they treated us beautifully, and they changed the picture. They had all the papers that the Jewish people are good and they can get along. You can get along, and you can see if you'll try our way, if the world will turn around and try our way, that we could get along.
All right, now. Also, I'm a Palestinian. I'm born there. My grandmother told me, live together, peace with them. The Arabs are very, each other is babysitting. Very peaceful, very friendly.
We can get along, and then try our way.
But you're going to get along. You're going to get along, and if I may, all right. Now you were just at Camp David. You had a demonstration down at Camp David. This is July 25th, and they're just gathering. Mr. Arafat and Barak are down there now. President Clinton and the whole world's looking at it. You were there and you had a demonstration. And what were you telling them in your demonstration? What was the headline of what your demonstration? It says that you proclaimed that there can be no peace.
There can never be a full peace, like our rabbis taught us, unless there is the state of Israel totally stops, and the land is given back to the indigenous people over there, and we will be living peacefully under the nations, under the other nations over there. It will be the Palestinians.
Do you actually think that this is going to occur in the real world?
Yes, if you will take away their propaganda.
Do you think the state of Israel is going to cease to exist?
It will have to.
Definitely, because God promised us that will end. God promised us that it will end.
But you understand you're out of step with most of the way the Jewish people of the world see, and most of the world see.
Again, many hundreds of thousands of Jews believe, because this is the only Torah way, this is the only true the way a Jew can think. This is the only way to think. Now, the ones who are unfortunately left the fold of Judaism, they think differently, but it's not.
Now that would include your Reform and conservative,
right? But there's
view.
many. Like I say, the Orthodox, all the yeshiva teachings hold like we hold. That this is the only way a Jew can think, and this is what Judaism is. This is the only way you could be a proper Jew. This is the only thought of Judaism. And I say, if they would stop the propaganda against the other nations, you would see that the Palestinians are like in Iran and in Tunisia, like we had in Yemen. They would treat us. They treated the Jewish people properly. It's false propaganda. They would treat us properly because God makes the only time that the nations treat us badly is when God feels they should. But if we do properly, then the nations will treat us good, and they have treated us properly in the Muslim nations.
It's an incredibly interesting presentation you have, and it certainly is not your normal run-of-the-mill view of things. And it's one interesting. One of the problems is, I'm sorry. One of the problems is we have run out of time. Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Weberman, particularly Rabbi Weiss. It's been your pleasure to have had the perceptions. I'm sorry we're running right out of time, but it's been your pleasure to have the perceptions of these men presenting a view of the Natura Carta. We'll put up information where you can contact them at the end. It's a very unusual, and let's just say that within the context of allowing all voices to be heard, we want to hear these voices which are very, very unusual and ought to be heard by a great number of people. They may have more meaning now than perhaps they did, even if you carried that struggle along, and these voices should be heard, particularly now as we come up to the I would say you're up against a difficult task in the short run here in terms of having Israel cease to exist. But
well, 50 years they haven't accomplished much except bloodshed.
That's another issue. But anyway, we in Conversations invite you to tune in again. We'll be coming back again next week. But it's been your pleasure, our pleasure, to have been able to have and present to you the ideas of these unusual gentlemen who are part of a Natura Carta, part of an international movement. I know Rabbi Dome in London has written The Transformation. It's a book, and
a number of books.
It's a considerable thing, and the Palestinians are interested in it, or Yasser Arafat is, and so it's an interesting perspective to put it mildly. We're in Conversation. Invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again next week. That's it for now. Thank you for viewing, and until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've got a little bit of time.
That was an hour.
Yeah.
It's not clear enough.
Yeah, I
to
know.
clear up, because a lot of questions and a lot of answers.
No,
It's not enough 1 hour.
Somebody see it, they did not come in the mind.
People
clear
don't
what-
understand.
What
You don't think, yeah.
We have to get to the root of everything, to bring out everything, to explain.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's secret, a hezbollah.
Yeah.
But it is not a hint.
50 Sachen, man bringt stolz mit Säude.
It's a pity, like, going from issue to issue. It should go with like a
Step by
system,
step.
step by step,
Yeah.
explaining what Zionism is, and then
But
taking
Judaism is
issues,
what-
and that way it's easier. Then I think, because there's so many issues, so many volatile points, like the whole
There
thing
are,
here.
there are so
yeah.
many,
But if
yeah.
you jump from one point to the